I'm Miss Andrea.
I'm Miss Mare.
I'm Miss Jordan.
This is Lesson 2, Veins of Civilization, Ancient History.
All right, so Lesson 2 is about people.
Oh, thank God. This is where we actually start talking about humans more or less just sort of being alive. So the beginning of ancient history is not exciting. It is mostly us being like, okay, so I figured out the up part from I'm no longer on all fours, and I figured out the upright thing, which a lot of this chapter is about.
Yeah.
It's talking about the different versions of Homo sapien.
Yep.
So Homo sapien is what we consider ourselves human, but or different evolutions of that. I think the official one that we are now is Homo sapien.
Yeah, Homo sapien sapien.
Yes. And so we was kicking around with some other types of humans. Neanderthals would be ones that you were very used to.
Right. And so it's kind of what's happening here is we're discussing this whole idea of the Homo genus.
Yes.
So if you haven't had biology and you don't know the taxonomy of how we organize living things, everything gets categorized into its different little place. Humans are animals, they're mammals. So when you get to the genus, which is the second to last classification, that's Homo, and it just means human, and there's several things under that header.
Yes.
And then you have a species.
So our genus is Homo, our species is sapien.
Sapien.
And
Those are how the words work. So, regardless of any other connotation that you may have for any of those words, just means humans.
And current humans are Homo sapiens sapiens.
Yes.
Yes.
We dug down into that.
We evolved one more time.
Right.
We found the need to delineate Homo sapien and said we need to delineate again genetically.
Right.
Genetically, we need to delineate further. Homo sapien.
And these things are constantly changing because there's constant research in this area. Like, we're still discovering new things about DNA, and there are a lot of assumptions that had happened, back before we had cracked the whole human genome, which was in my lifetime.
Yes.
So there's a whole lot that we thought we knew based on these archaeological records, that some of it turned out to be validated by DNA research. Some of it wound up being refuted by it. And so we're going to talk about tracing people's movement across the planet with DNA and other things in this chapter.
Yeah, so the oldest fossils of the Homo sapiens that we can find is about 2.5 million years ago. That is as far back as we can trace what we are.
Right.
As humans.
Unequivocally, these are our ancestors.
Yes. After that, about 2.4 million years ago, we had another glaciation period, which is an ice age.
Yeah.
So ice ages are important in ancient history because it told us how we were moving around the planet. Mostly we were all in Africa. And then we had last time how fire was a technology back then. We have not figured out that part yet. So 2.4 million years ago, if it got icy, we just kind of had to go somewhere.
That wasn't icy.
That was not icy. The animals went somewhere, the plants died, and we were like, I guess we go somewhere too. And so 2.4 million years ago, there was a glaciation period, and we went, must leave.
And so that's when we started heading out of Africa.
That is one of the first times we started moving around. Out happened a little later.
Right.
That's true.
Because it's 2.1 million years ago is when we're getting people at Olduvai Gorge, which is in
modern Tanzania.
Modern Tanzania, Africa.
So we actually have bones, we have technology, rocks that humans shaped to do something with that can be dated back to 2.1 million years ago at Olduvai Gorge.
So this is the earliest record of us being like, well, I need a thing. So if I shape this rock in a thing that is more conducive
two rocks together
to the thing I'm trying to do, and that is a tool technically. Again, what word we use, technology is a loose term in ancient.
Well, technology in general is the thing that makes our life easier.
Yeah, it's the thing that we use to do a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's technology.
It is.
So,
One that we don't have at this point, actually.
yes.
Yeah.
We've not, writing's a long way off.
Oh, yeah. So 1.5 million years ago, we get Homo erectus. So this is technically not us.
Right.
It is not a Homo sapien. It is a person that also stood up.
Right. Humanoid being
Yes.
that genetically is not the same genetics that we are.
Yes. I think there are some genetic traces of Homo erectus rattling around within.
I don't know enough about the research to know.
I know.
That was one of the beliefs, that they absolutely found these skeletons. They were not the same, but they assumed that there was absolutely some intermingling of the species. I don't know if the DNA research bears that out.
I don't know if the
Yeah.
DNA made it. I know Neanderthal DNA.
Yes,
is
definitely.
still in existence.
There is some of that
I
rattling
think
around.
it would have. But I don't know if there's erectus. I think they may have died out.
Okay.
Give me your phone.
Here you go. As she Googles, I'll move us to.
So they are similar to us. They stood up. They used tools. They are very similar but genetically distinct from Homo sapiens. They had shorter arms, longer legs in proportion to their torsos than we have.
Yes. From there, the only other real progression during 1.5 million years ago is Acheulean tools,
Yes.
which just means we started doing the shapes a little better. So it's a method of tool creation used to make a stone tool in a characteristic teardrop shape. Very specifically, we've got our pointies in a very specific pointy.
Made it easier to kill things that we could eat.
Yes, so that the stabby stab was a little more efficient. Again, this is as far as we've gotten with tools at this point.
And these are it's a shape type
Yes.
that then we see in places around the world. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about, I don't know if we get to it here in lesson 2. One of the things that we're going to be talking about is that we can categorize, we can track how people moved and what societies interacted with each other by what tools and what artifacts they share in common.
So far, we do not see any genetic markers for Homo erectus.
And all they feel any genetic markers we have are only as old as 400,000 years.
So
That
Homo
tracks.
sapien just doesn't have anything that going back that far.
Because there have been enough
I mean, there's
mutations
Yeah, that makes sense.
and other... Okay, I connect that doesn't necessarily say whether there was intermingling or not, just
Yeah.
because it's so fact.
Yeah,
That
like,
it's really...
So it goes to the beginning. Our DNA markers, our ability to recognize DNA markers, go back 400,000 years to
So that's
the
just
near
our
beginnings of the Neanderthal. Our ability to recognize it.
well, why after you
Species.
get to the 0.0 something percent of genetics, at some point you go, I don't know if this
I
matters.
don't care.
Right.
So whether or not there is intermingling between the two species is kind of not pertinent
Right.
modern
It
science
says
or genetics.
Finding older DNA in other hominins is unlikely, as for most of our evolutionary history, hominins lived in the warm, sometimes wet, tropical subtropics of Africa and Asia, where DNA does not preserve itself.
Well, there we go. We get fire.
This
back
is
or
when...
something.
Yeah, this is when...
Running away from fire to running toward it.
Well, to harnessing it, to putting it in a place that they could use it for a thing.
Yes. So we were like, if I heat this up,
I mean, yeah, no. Warm food is...
They're
It
like-
also, keeps things that might want you away from you during the night.
There's probably a little experimentation around it.
Keeps you warmer.
They were sort of
Oh.
like, this was useful.
Mm-hmm.
And when they saw it started, they were like, maybe grab a stick.
If we're talking controlled fire pits,
Yes.
we fought how to make sparks. We're not just harvesting from lightning at that point. If you have controlled fire
Okay.
pits, somebody figured out while clack with
you
the
imagine them
stones
going,
that this is a
The
spark.
bonfire has died out. We have to wait for the next lightning
However,
storm.
we don't find evidence of fire being harnessed until about 14 million years ago around the Lake Turkana. Yes. So we're harnessing. We are, in fact, harnessing.
Right.
Okay. And apparently that was in Kenya. Good for them.
Yeah, those are the first places where we see oxidized sections of earth that are several centimeters thick that are like, okay, a fire was here. We're not talking about scorched, forest regions.
Yeah.
There is somebody burned and it stayed here.
Yeah.
That's the advancement.
That's the advancement. And for about 600,000 years,
Yeah.
More of what?
Anything?
technology, 800,000. About 800,000 years.
There was less eat,
Look,
keeping us warm.
you can only get so far. Having technology helps you get more technology. We wasn't working on a lot.
We're gonna actually, so you'll see that later.
Yeah.
Not in this book, but you will see that later. That once you kind of hit a certain threshold of technology, all of a sudden you're going to have a technology boom.
Mm-hmm.
Fire was not one of those events.
The next thing that happened is that we found the need to move further.
Yeah,
So the ice age had shifted, and we can't live here no more.
right.
Though we have harnessed fire, it's not warm enough to keep us alive in these conditions. The animals are moving. We must also.
Well, I mean, yes, there is some of that migration that's happening here because we're 600,000, and so you start to get this migration that kind of covers pretty much the entire continent
Yes.
and a lot
Which means
of Asia.
more people were happening.
So more people were happening because you're not
they have
seeing
fire.
that they had left these areas because they're still active in those areas, but now they just happen to also be over here.
Yes. More of the earth had opened up to us, and some
Right.
people said, I'm going to go that way.
Right. Like, I don't like these people. I'm going over here.
Well, absolutely, I'm sure that happened.
Yeah, I'm so certain.
I mean, that's kind of
That is the.
So-
I was like, I'm going to go. You guys are annoying.
so. And this migration actually is largely Homo erectus.
Yes. Homo erectus probably thought we were annoying. That's a joke. But
But maybe not.
maybe not.
We're much, entirely too much.
Doing something.
I'm like, I'm not sure we have speech here.
There's no way to know if we.
Yeah, I was like, I don't
There's
know.
no way to know.
So anyways.
So, like, vocal cords, that's not something that's going to be preserved in the
No.
archaeological record. That's soft tissue that's going to get eaten.
And vocal cords, especially like depending on their shape, tells us what kind of language we would have been capable of.
Right.
And also our way our mouth composition and
Yep.
tongues and stuff were. Which again, things that we don't have through history.
135,000 years.
So
No.
No.
Unique language capacity was present at least 135,000 years ago.
okay.
So we know nothing before that.
Yeah.
Subsequently, language might have entered social 100,000 years ago. Homo sapiens is 230,000.
We did not have a language that could be even chunked down to being alphabetical.
No, we absolutely
Well,
did
because
not.
that's a writing technology.
We absolutely did
Yes.
not.
We have absolutely no concept of when you began speaking
I mean,
No.
and when
people had to agree that the noises meant the same thing, and then people had to be able to represent it,
Which
and that didn't happen for a
Basi-
while.
Wait, there's a population of like as much as 1.5 million Homo erectus. They're communicating some way. Birds communicate with like dancing feathers and
Yeah, it's
stuff.
like we
They're-
were-
so regardless, human beings are communicating with each other, whether that looks and sounds like what we would consider modern language today. I mean, I'm sure it didn't.
yeah.
Language has evolved.
Like our capacity for complicated language is not something we can track.
Right.
So
Because there's no archaeological data for that, and it was already happening by the time we have written data.
exactly.
So,
when we start writing things down, I'm assuming we could all speak. So
Oh yeah.
all right. So we do get a spear.
yeah.
Honestly, again, probably spears prior to this. By 420,000 BC, we've got a artifact made of yew wood that has
Yes. Which was definitely carved by tools made of flint specifically.
Yeah.
So we know that we're using things and going, this is stronger than this other thing. It is easier to get this into a shape and then use it to whittle
Yep,
other things into a more specific shape. That is what that tells us.
it is.
It also tells us that people were that is now England.
Right, because that was found in Essex, England. So that means that migration had happened that far north. So people are kind of getting to be just about everywhere.
Yes.
Then we also have the Acheulean hand axe, which is 400,000 BCE.
Let's get on the stage about how we pronounce this. Is it a shell or Julian?
I think it's a Culian.
No, do not ever trust my pronunciation of anything.
Acheulean.
Acheulean.
It was in the middle.
Acheulean.
Okay.
Yeah. Will I remember that? Probably not.
That's fair.
Okay. So the Acheulean hand axe.
There we go.
Is a very, very specific looking shape. Was made and used Neanderthals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was first found in France in the mid 19th century and named for the oh, that's why I can't pronounce it. It's named for a French site.
Oh,
I can't pronounce anything in French.
that's so fair.
Saint Achille.
Yeah. So the site of Saint Achille is active around 400,000 BCE. So it's important to know that that's not the of these Acheulean hand axes tools that we found. Those are just the first ones.
Yes.
That does confuse things often because they'll say and then when you start digging through the history, something's older. It's older because it's when it was found, not older because of when it was dated.
Yes.
And so those two different olds,
It gets a little murky.
and
Well,
you have to
so
start
there's
delineating it.
There's
Yeah.
another layer to this argument too, though, because you've got we've dated this to be as far back as we could find it until the next discovery.
And they're like, oh wait.
And then they find another one that can be dated earlier, and now you have a new oldest.
But we
that
still
doesn't-
already call that other thing the oldest, and we're not going to be able to scrub that from everything else.
I know.
It's in
that-
scholarly papers,
and that's
it's
what
in
happens.
research,
Books and scholarly papers have declared it the oldest, and now this new thing is the oldest.
And I was like, we're not going to go back and
And you're trying to
rectify
write a
those.
paper, and you're like, it takes you an hour to realize that the new thing is the old thing. Ugh.
Yeah.
So I will say,
So,
out of all of the historical periods, ancient is actually the hardest to research
The hardest.
because the new discoveries, the new research, everything that's happening, it changes so quickly.
It's taken us 2 years to write ancient history. We thought we were gonna hit it in 6 months.
Yep.
To
And things that we wrote in that first 6 months, as we have come back to do the editing and the final stuff to release the books, have changed.
This is like just technically not true anymore.
Right.
And you're sort of like,
And so right now, I feel like for now, we're in a period of constant discovery,
yes.
which keeps the study of ancient history moving and a little uncomfortable.
Forever.
Yeah.
So, and then we get stone spearheads in Morocco. This flint blades, they may not actually be spearheads.
Yeah, no. So we have no,
They were flip sticks, weren't they?
evidence that they were being used as spears until like 200,000, but we definitely had flint blades that were similar.
Got it.
And those were in
So
Morocco.
it's the stone part. We
Yes.
just don't have any kind of archaeological evidence that they were being tied to the end of a stick.
Right, because that leather tie may have deteriorated, or whatever the tie was made of.
Right. Or they may have just been using it until somebody figured out that they could tie it to the end of a stick.
Yeah. At some point, somebody might have just been like, "Fine, that works. Okay."
So the literature that we've paired with this lesson, that's all there is to lesson 2.
Yeah.
Is we go through some of these technologies and basically just where are places that we see people.
Yeah.
Like, what is the earliest things that we see? We, logically to us, paired this with creation stories. If that's a thing.
Okay, so one's looking at me and one's poking me. We're talking about the earliest evidence of man, and we don't really know when we started talking and having conversations. But the first thing he does when he stops running from things, right, is he sits down and starts going, "Who am I? Why am I here?
How did I
If a
get
tree
here?
falls in the woods,
And there's no one there to hear it.
right?"
Doesn't make a sound.
And so they started weaving together. Now, in this time period, 200,000 BCE, did they start weaving together these stories? No. But
This is
if
when
we're
they would have
studying
been
literature, this is when these stories would have been.
When they would have been set, but when people first start sitting down and contemplating their existence, some of these things have some similarities.
They are
And so the
crazily similar.
like fermenting of these stories is almost certainly happening as people are catching their breath.
So as you
Yes.
go through different societies, because at this point people have dispersed, and different societies are telling similar stories. In Mesopotamia, they have the Enuma Elish, and they're talking about how the earth was created. how they were begat, the mother of chaos, and chaos to meant the mother of them both. The waters were mingled together. So it's very creation minded. Hebrew, Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Formless and empty, darkness, surface of the earth. Let there be light. So there was light.
I know he was hovering over the water. So like the primordial waters is kind of universal.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't know what was up there, and everybody said seems wet to me, but they all said it.
Yeah. And the Rig Veda there was neither non-existence nor existence. It's neither the realm of space nor the sky, which is beyond. And so we kind of give you just the beginnings, like the first couple sentences from 4, 5, 6 different creation stories from different cultures. And we tell you where we got them from. So if you want to look up the whole thing and read the whole thing. Caveat to parents who are teaching this to younger children. When you go back to look up the whole thing,
Read
on
it
a
first.
lot of this literature, read it first.
Ancient history is not censored.
Literature was written for different societies than we have now.
Yes.
They had different moral values. They had different ways of telling stories.
Tracing a thing that would happen in the city square. That was a free for all.
Yeah. No,
This-
it's just different
this,
society, different
This
culture.
was rated E in their opinion.
Would not enjoy the same rating here
Yeah.
today in the Western world.
Now it's like, oh, there's a child in a room. I'm very uncomfortable reading this.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to kind of use that as a caveat for all lessons as we're going through, because some of this literature is something you may want to vet.
Which is why we've chosen things carefully.
Or
And you know, bits and pieces.
sometimes we provide a synopsis. Sometimes we've kind of rewritten it to give you the overview, so more appropriate for all age groups. We have done this kind of throughout the entirety of the literature for ancient history. There are other published copies of some of these translations that are written for children.
So if you want to dig deeper as parents, digging, and then share with your children what you found
Don't just
palatable.
grab the original translations of Greek mythology.
I was
don't do
like,
that.
you can read Gilgamesh out loud if you want,
That would be a choice.
but I wouldn't suggest it.
Right. Especially not early on.
But yeah, that's
there
pretty
we
much
are.
lesson 2.
That's lesson 2.